Happy Halloween, everyone. And to celebrate the holiday, I want to talk about one of my favorite horror films, Clive Barker's Hellraiser, a film based on the book The Hellbound Heart, which was also written by Clive Barker. Forgive me if my synopsis of the movie takes a minute to explain, as there is a lot to unpack here. There will be some spoilers for those who haven't seen the movie. So, the story involves a hedonistic man named Frank Cotton, who buys a puzzle box known as the Lament Configuration, aka the Le Machin configuration in the book, which is said to open a door to a realm of otherworldly pleasure. Once Frank opens the box, he summons sadomasochistic beings known as Cenobites, who take Frank's desires to the extreme. Frank is torn apart and his soul is taken by the Cenobites into a realm where pain and pleasure have no boundaries. As time moves on, Frank's brother Larry inherits Frank's home, and along with his second wife Julia, they move in together in Frank's home. Unbeknownst to Larry, Julia had an affair with Frank and she secretly still has feelings for Larry's brother. While moving in, Larry cuts his hand and the blood spilled in the attic helps Frank's corpse to reanimate back onto Earth. Julia finds Frank and is convinced to help gather men for Frank to drain their life force so he can be whole again. Julia is able to do all of this behind Larry's back but is caught in the act by Larry's daughter Kirsty. Kirsty is able to get her hands on the Lament Configuration and solves the box to summon the Cenobites. Kirsty is able to make a deal with the Cenobites by revealing her uncle Frank managed to escape the Cenobites' realm, so she insists they take Frank's soul instead of hers. The movie for its time was considered very graphic with its gore and sex scenes. It is pretty tame by today's standards. However, my introduction to this movie came to me when I was around 7 or 8 years old. Yes, I watched this movie at a very young age, but with adult supervision, of course. At the time, it really felt like I was watching something very adult and vulgar. Throughout the years, not many movies with blood and gore scares me due to watching movies like Hellraiser at such a young age. What drew me in with Hellraiser was the Cenobites themselves, mainly Pinhead and the Chatterer. I was fascinated by the creatures' designs and the mystique surrounding the world of the Cenobites. One of my favorite lines for the movie is when Pinhead answers Kirsty's question of "Who are you?"
Explorers in the further regions of experience, demons to some, angels to others.
The line "angels to some, demons to others" truly left my imagination to believe that the Cenobites' realm was a gray area that was only judged upon different individuals who experienced opening the Lament Configuration. It was a world of its own, and these were beings unlike what your spiritual or religious beliefs could describe. I was very disappointed when the sequels gave up trying to create a new complicated world by simply downgrading them to the basic label of demons from hell. I get the movie title is called Hellraiser, but I truly believe Clive Barker had a unique take of another dimension separate from both heaven and hell. Another aspect of the movie that I have grown to appreciate is the idea that human pleasure is equal to that of an animal's desire to survive. There were constant motifs of animals being displayed in this movie. For example, animal noises can be heard while the Cenobites are on screen. The hunger for pleasure is very well executed in the character of Julia. The film mostly focuses on Julia luring men into an attic so she can help Frank regenerate. With every man Julia lures for Frank to kill, the more desensitized she becomes. The more she begins to change into a sadistic character, much like Frank himself. After all, Julia is solely doing this just so she can have sex with Frank again. To simply put, Hellraiser is about how far a human would go just to save a sex partner. Another aspect of the movie that I've enjoyed is the beautifully haunting musical score composed by Christopher Young. I am a fan of Christopher Young's musical work in Spider-Man 3, Drag Me to Hell, and Ghost Rider. I highly recommend you check out those soundtracks if you haven't already. I even used some of Christopher's soundtracks for my Doctor Doom project. Christopher would improve upon the Hellraiser theme in its sequel Hellbound Hellraiser 2, which is what many fans consider to be the true Hellraiser theme. My favorite scenes of the movie have to be when Kirsty summons the Cenobites and the scene when the Cenobites confront Frank. Both are iconic scenes that truly made its mark in horror movie history, and I've lost count of how many times I rewatched those scenes in isolation. Now, despite my love for the first movie, I do have my issues with some of the lore and rules within the Hellraiser mythos. Much like how I previously disagreed with the Cenobites being labeled as demons from hell in later sequels, I don't like the inconsistency of the Lament Configuration. There's a lot to unpack there, but I'll make a note to cover my issues with the Hellraiser franchise in a separate video. So if you're looking for a good horror classic movie to watch as part of your Halloween tradition, I recommend you watch the original Hellraiser by Clive Barker. Thanks for watching, and take care.